it is Tuesday night. That means another episode of Goal Horns and Fight Songs. We did not have any games this past weekend. We don't have any games this coming weekend. So we do have a special guest, and I'm going to turn it over to Wes to introduce him.
Yeah, joining us is a player from Western who played from 2005 to 2009, serving as captain from the 08-09 season. He was a 7th-round draft pick of the then Phoenix Coyotes of the 2006 NHL draft. He sits second in penalty minutes for the Broncos with 407 throughout his career. And after college, he spent some time in the ECHL, the AHL, and the EIHL. Joining us is Chris Frank, also known as Frank the Tank to those who were good enough to be in the Lost and Lunatic section while Chris was playing.
Hey, guys.
So, first off, we like to do our lightning round right off the rip, but we call it the 1T warm-ups. So it's kind of like that section of the warm-up time where guys are just passing pucks and you're just ripping them at the empty net. And I will start us off. Are you a left skate guy or a right skate first guy?
Ooh, good question. Yeah, double pump that foot to get it all the way back in the heel area. Right skate guy for sure.
We definitely get some varied answers on that one. So then the first one for me is what is your favorite pizza topping?
See, my wife has made me super boring these days. We're pescatarians. But I could tell you, most recently at a friend's wedding, she had pickles, dill pickles on a pizza. And I'm telling you, it was lights out around 1 a.m. after a couple bevies to celebrate. And I want that dill every time now.
That's what
I
I
might
have
have to
not
give
heard.
that a try.
Give
Yeah,
it a
I'm
go.
gonna have to give that a try.
Who
Yeah.
was your favorite athlete growing up?
Uh, See, Seattle, we didn't have a lot of hockey. We had the Thunderbirds over here in the Western Hockey League, but no NHL team. So I was definitely fair weather bandwagon fan. I followed every dynasty, and I was a fan of every dynasty between the Red Wings and the Devils in the 90s and early 2000s. But I would say it's probably Scott Stevens was a guy that I always just loved watching. In fact, I just got caught in like a YouTube rabbit hole of Scott Stevens last week, watching him just blow people up. It was awesome.
Oh, that might explain some things.
For sure.
uh, if you were gonna have a personalized goal song, what would that be?
Yeah, this question's definitely been tossed around. It changes all the time.
Yeah, because it's starting to become a thing, and there's a couple NHL teams that do it now, and it's like, okay,
Totally.
what would it be?
Yeah, I feel like it dates back to the origins of the question of like WWF back then, E now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what would you walk out to kind of thing, and then UFC nowadays. I got a steal from when I was a freshman and my senior class, their theme song was Here for a Good Time, Not a Long Time. I feel like I'd have to go with that one.
That is a good song choice.
Yeah.
And actually, it's really funny because I was watching the UFC fight on Saturday with my brother, and uh, who was it? I think it was Strickland came out to Kurt Angle's music, and all I could do was the new "You suck, you suck." That's all I could think of.
Yeah, it's a choice to make. Not the way you really want to start out a fight night. Do you have or did you have a favorite spot to shoot from on the ice?
Oh boy. Honestly, if I could not shoot it, I was happy to pass it off in the offensive zone. I remember we struggled a little bit at the beginning of the year, my freshman year, and they tried me on the power play. And I always say, if I'm the player that's the top of your power play, things are definitely not going right. So I was most comfortable having that first breakout pass, following it up, and if there was a turnover, maybe hitting somebody in the neutral zone.
The last one for me. What's the best chirp that you ever heard in your playing career?
Gosh, I got chirped all the time, to be honest, and I'm not very good at giving it back, so I just would take it most of the time. It's a really basic one, real simple, but I thought it was hilarious when I put two and two together and actually figured out what it meant. But getting called a grocery stick, I think that was my favorite one. But I guess
I
that
think you're the
changed.
second person to say that's their favorite one.
Yeah, it's simple but effective.
I think that was also Trevor Gorsuch's favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, Trevor's a good dude. I think you'd like Trevor. He was a goaltender for Western in the late two teens.
I actually just this is embarrassing, especially on the Bronco podcast, that his name's slipping my mind right now. But there's a former Bronco hockey goalie who moved over here and is currently, because I coach the youth hockey over here, some of the teams, and he's right now our goalie coach. Like he bounces around the association.
Oh, nice.
He was, I don't, gosh, I wish I remember his name, but he was right. I think he was a freshman when Derek Rail.
Yep.
Remember him? Right around that area with Ian Slater and all those guys. And they were seniors. I think he was the third goalie. That rings the bell at all?
Maybe. I'm trying to think of, because I think their senior year was the year we won the CCHA championship,
Yeah.
and they were using Frank Slabowski was like the phenom rookie goaltender that year. And then I think was Lucas Hafner still there, and maybe Frederico might have been the three that were there, because I think Kuhn I think left in 2011.
You know what? Now that I think about it, I think he said he knew Derek Rail really well because Derek Rail was the Van Wilder of the school back in the day. So it might have been the year after. So disregard, but he's the man. I'm meeting him. It just felt like home having another Bronco around.
Yeah, Trevor's
And
currently
see,
playing in the ECHL with Wichita. Well, he's with Wichita. They haven't been playing him lately, and they keep getting extra goalies bumped down to him, so he's kind of sitting third man out at the moment.
Sure.
But he's a great dude. We've had him on the show a few times.
Oh, cool.
yeah,
But
and we go to him with questions and everything, but all those names they meant nothing to me because I am a Bulldog fan. So
Okay.
I grew up in northern Minnesota. UMD just kind of naturally became my team. So,
Of
but
course.
Wes, he's kind of made me into a Bronco fan in their second team. He even got me to wear a jersey last year over Thanksgiving. We went to a game in Nashville, so I'm learning. I'm learning some history every time we record.
So you got to forgive me. Is this a Bronco hockey podcast or a college hockey
so
podcast?
NCHC, so the conference that Western plays in, because Mike's a
Cool.
Minnesota Duluth fan. I got the Broncos on lock here, um, and really like we started out both being on a Facebook page that made NHL jokes. And it just so happens, I think one of us was complaining about the college game that we went to or watched. And then we're like, oh, you watched that team? Like, yeah, I watched this team. Like, I live in Kalamazoo and go to every Western game. He's like, oh. So then we spun off that into this. So,
That's so cool. Yeah, it's nice to have outside of the spit and chicklets and another one my buddy runs, Jeff Lavecchio. Um, I'm always looking for new hockey podcasts. So that's awesome that there's a college one specific to this conference too.
yeah.
Yeah, we try to watch, especially when all 8 teams are playing. We try to watch all 4 games at the same time and then pick out different things.
Oh,
Sometimes it's a little tough with life, but
for sure.
we do our best.
Yeah. I don't understand like everything college hockey. They do a great job, but I don't know how they're watching all 60 some teams and breaking it down and getting into it. So, but they do a good job, and they get an interview I think every week with someone from across the college landscape. But so let's dive into you though. Uh, what was your recruiting like to Western? Did you get an actual visit, and how did that kind of go? And seeing the student section that kind of precedes the hockey program in some regards.
Yeah, for sure. So I was playing in the BCHL at the time, and there was like a spring or summer little showcase for BCHL players, and it was on the mainland because I was playing on Vancouver Island at the time. So me and a buddy went over, and it was just 2 games, and Brendan Kenny was the D coach at the time, and in that one game, I think 1 or 2 games, I don't remember, but I just remember doing all right and had a couple big hits, kind of thing. One was on a buddy I went over with actually, and afterwards Kenner just approached my mom and I, and told us about the program. And at the time, it was a CCHA conference, and quick background on what they were looking for and who was going in and leaving, and said, you want to come check it out? And I said, for sure. So I did have a visit, and it was in the summertime, so I didn't actually get to experience the student section, the Awesome Lunatics, on the flyover, but got over there, met Brent Walton. I think you mentioned that you knew Wally too, or remember watching Wally play back in the day. He was.
So I just missed him. I was there
Did
for
you?
your last 2 years. Just missed
Oh,
him.
okay, got you. So yeah, Brent Walton was just a maniac in terms of, I think he was, gosh, 5'8", a buck 50, 60, and that was back then in the game when a lot of clutch and grab and just trying to kill each other, and a lot of big slow D-men like myself trying to run through people, and the little guys could just get destroyed and refs wouldn't call anything, and this guy was still putting up ridiculous points. And at the time, Western, we weren't, definitely the way the program is ranking wise now, is good. And so this guy was just a maniac in terms of how skilled he was, played through everything, and was getting nominations and whatnot. But this guy, like I said, his class and their motto was here for a good time, not a long time, which may also explain our record at times back then. But they showed me around, had a great time. The campus was really cool. Being a college town, I've heard of college towns with Washington State University over here. It's similar to like a Kalamazoo in terms of just kind of small town, just lives off of the university essentially. And so it was so fun being somewhere where it seemed like hockey was such a big part of the community. So, I mean, I don't know if you want me to get into it right this second, but I mean, my first introduction to the Lunatics was that first exhibition game I ever played, and it was amazing. Like I hadn't experienced. I didn't really know. I wasn't a fan of soccer, and I didn't know how European soccer fans chant during a game. So it was my first time hearing chants throughout the game from student sections, and I was hooked from the very second that I got on the ice.
Yeah, it's something that like the coaching staff and every player who's come through the program like definitely make sure that like they make it known that like they love the student section, and the student section loves showing up to games, and even in like those those lean years, for lack of a better term, but that like you guys played, like it was still bumping to be in the student section. And like I don't know that we ever really cared what the record was, as long as the guys on were playing on the ice, and like there were a few big hits every once in a while. But like I don't know that too many of them, whether it was because of the tailgating before the games or whatever, but really noticed what the record was.
Right.
But they're into the game, like they understand what's going on too.
Oh,
that,
big
that,
time. Go ahead. Sorry.
oh, I was just gonna say that's one of the things that when I started watching Western games, the first little bit I was just doing UMD and only their package, and then I started watching Western games. They rank the student sections for college hockey, and I don't know how Western is number one, because you see some of these schools out east that they rank, and it's that East Coast bias. I'm It makes me so disappointed in our student section at UMD, seeing what the Lost and Lunatics do every single game, whether they're good or they're bad.
Yeah, I mean, they brought the noise. To be honest, I'd like to partly blame them for being second in or school history in penalty minutes, because my first game was exhibition against a Canadian college team, and I it was just like one of those things where it just all kind of clicked. I just had a really fortunate first game where I lit someone up in the first period, and the chance of Frank started coming out, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. And just got your blood adrenaline pumping. And second period, lined somebody up again, and this is right around the time that Old School had just come out with Frank the Tank. So then all of a sudden it went from Frank in the first period, then Frank the Tank, and yeah, I mean the same thing happened the third, another big hit, and then a little. Obviously, it was college, so almost a fight, but a big scrum happened right by the bench because those Canadian university guys are tough as nails, and they're coming right out of juniors, where that's what you do if you get in. Someone blows your buddy up, you drop them, and yeah, it was from there on like the home ice advantage was unbelievable, and I think Michigan was really the only consistent school against us in our 4 years where they could overcome that home ice advantage and get a quick start on us. Otherwise, it was the other teams that were weathering the storm against us just because we had that backing the student section.
Uh, who do you think was the biggest rival for Western while you were playing? Because I think now they're going to say it's Miami just because of the ties to the CCHA and like they came with us or brought us along to the new conference. But who is it for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. Like, obviously, we really hated Michigan and Michigan State with a passion. But I honestly think that the toughest games to play were against Ferris. Ferris State at that time just gave us such a hard time, and it was just back and forth all the time with those guys. And they were similar to us in terms of just being kind of a grindy team that doesn't have like a first round draft picks or very many draft picks at all at that point. And if we were going to win, it was rarely just one guy putting it in. It was by community. So it was always scrappy games, fast paced, and really physical too.
Yeah, I mean those games are still like that. Like we don't play Ferris nearly as often. We played them this year, uh, took the win at home, and then lost in the shootout up there. And but yeah, every time those two teams meet, like it's still that way. They're both scrappy games,
Yeah,
and so much fun to watch, no matter like where it's at. And I know Ferris is a little bit of a smaller arena, but when they show out, like it's fun to be up there too. I mean, this year was it
oh
was
yeah,
a little bit smaller than the last time I was up there, but yeah, you throw the records out the window and just watch those two teams go at it.
totally. It was really physical. And then Omaha, Nebraska too. It was always they just had a couple players that I think were freshmen or sophomores around the same time we were there, and we got under each other's skin all the time, and just not only wanted to win but just hurt too.
All right, we got a question from a viewer here. What was your favorite game memory while at Western, or a favorite moment like a big win?
I would say, and I think everybody in my class would say too, my freshman year, it was the Halloween weekend versus Ohio State, and Ohio State was ranked like they had to have been top five around that time, and we swept them at home. And the like you mentioned with the Lunatics, it was the memory straight from the fan section. I mean, it was nice to win against a ranked team, the top five, and sweep them at that, especially a huge school like Ohio State too. But the fans were going nuts. And then you throw in the fact that, as you mentioned earlier, I think one of the first things I heard, like myth wise, was we were supposed to be in the top 100 party schools or something like that, a Rolling Stone. But anytime they went to interview anybody about the night before, they couldn't remember what happened. So you throw in something like that, where the student section are clearly in cold weather having a good time pregame as well.
Oh yeah,
It was an electric atmosphere.
yeah. I mean, there was sort of a moment this last week that Western played. They had number 4 Denver in town, and game one, just anything Denver did, Western had the answer for it, and it was similar to like a couple of the games back. Even for whatever reason, Western shows up big when it's a big opponent, and then
Mm-hmm.
there were sometimes I think where they got a little, they would play to their opponent too much, and they've kind of cut that out a little bit, which is nice. But we would see the team struggle against lower ranked opponents, but then like number 1 or 4 in the country's in town, and they're getting stoned and every pass is getting intercepted, or they're throwing big numbers up. Like it was a 7-3 game on Friday against the toughest offense in the country, and the Lunatics are just going ape the second Western scores one goal.
For sure. Yeah,
Um,
yeah. The consistency was our issue at, back then too. You get up for the big ones, but the ones that you think you should win, it was up in the air sometimes.
who was the toughest non-conference opponent that you played? Because um, you had the WCHA, and then of course there's still Hockey East and Atlantic hockey and everything. But what did your non-conference schedule look like? Because every with the landscape changing, everything's different. And who was the toughest opponent and the toughest arena that you played in, non-conference wise?
Non-conference, for sure, the one that sticks out the most was Wisconsin when the year I think they had like Burrish and won the national title, which I think was my freshman year as well. We played at the Christmas tournament over there, and that was an amazing arena as well. I mean, you have those Badger fans. The arena is just it's like the Lunatics, but just a bigger arena with more of them. And so that home ice advantage was insane for them, and you could tell they thrived off it. And they were fast, they were great. They won the national title for a reason, and it just seemed like such a cool town to play hockey in as well. When guys are rolling up in their scooters or mopeds or whatever, somehow in the winter. I didn't know how that worked out over there. Amazing
Well,
place.
in Wisconsin, they don't have technology and whatever, so they kind of do whatever they need to do. And I mean, it is a party town. They probably were tailgating from 11 a. I've been to a couple Halloweens there because my buddy was in the band, and yeah, they like to party in Wisconsin, especially in Madison.
I imagine. Yeah. Yeah. It was really hard. Really fun place to play though.
So do you feel that Western has an advantage kind of no matter where they go because of the Lunatics? Like I think like it's always everyone talks about the home ice advantage of a team, but you got to think like everyone's home crowd juices them up a little bit. But Western plays under like constant noise on home ice. Can they do they take that with them to a place like a North Dakota or a Michigan back when Michigan was a little bit more Michigan-y than they have been in the past, or some of these other pretty solid known venues?
That's a tough one. I don't know. It's that the playing at home versus on the road. It's comes down to each individual so much. I mean, I guess in the sense that you're used to playing in a loud arena. So in terms of communication, you know how to kind of communicate in a loud environment, a ruckus environment. Um, you might be more uh, equipped to not get too high or get too low kind of situation too, because I mean, when you have that kind of noise, whether it's for you or against you, it can amp you up. It used to amp me up, I know for sure, and I used to love it. um, but obviously if you're too juiced up, you're going to go out there and make mistakes, and if you have no heart rate at all, there's probably something wrong with you, and that's probably not good either. But yeah, I'd say as a team overall, maybe just little things like communication and being able to communicate and not get lost in the moment would be the biggest advantage to playing in a loud arena like Lawson.
I got. We're gonna get there, so you keep going, Wes.
All right.
I'm researching something here.
We're gonna step back a little bit. What was it like for you having guys come in like when you started seeing recruits come in? Like, what was your kind of go-to thing? How are you trying to convince them to come to Western? And then, was there anybody that like stood out to you and you were like excited that they had said that they were gonna come and they showed up on campus?
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't think too much about it other than just really one thing that I thought was really good for us was even though we went through some tough years as a team, we all stuck together. Like we could always, there wasn't mother effing you or the next person or the blame game kind of thing when it came to individuals. We were really close, and to this day, I mean, still friends with a lot of guys, and I'll get the odd phone call from any class member or text message from any class member throughout the years, and you just pick up right where you left off. I know it's super cliche, but it's so true. And I think there's a lot of different teams I played on over the course of my career where um, you don't have that same connection if you've got a bunch of um, selfish individuals that are in it for themselves. It was such a team thing that we were going to lose together. We were going to win together, enjoy each other's successes together individually and as a team. So I really wanted any recruit that came in to kind of understand that and get on the same page, that as much as we want you, if you can't get on that page, you're not going to last too long, because, we'll weed you out kind of situation. Um, and then aside from that, obviously it's a college recruit. So, I mean, we're not having Ray Allen fun, but we're showing them a good time, showing them some of the local bars at that time, the Firehouse and etc. And making sure that they get what Kalamazoo has to offer outside of the arena as well. And then most exciting recruit, I just remember hearing a lot about Mark Letestu, and he had a good long career in the NHL as well. And I tell you what, that guy did not disappoint his friend. I think he was one and done, and signed a deal with Pittsburgh at a time where Crosby and Malkin were in their prime kind of thing, and still made the roster with two centers locked in when he was a center himself with the Big Show. We did our big thing was a 2-mile test back in the day. And so before the season started, we were all doing the 2-mile run. And I think he and Riley Gill, who's ECHL legend with numerous individual hardware, he and Riley Gill were dead last, probably got lapped on the 2-mile test amongst everybody on the team. Yeah. Two of the more successful players, obviously, when it came to hockey. So just the hockey IQ was insane on that guy.
Running 2 miles, I mean, I don't miss it. I used to run cross country. So as soon as I got told, like, as soon as I knew I was done, my cross country coach came up to me, you can run cross country and play tennis in college. And I'm like, the hell I'm running cross country. I barely made, like, I don't want to run one lap.
No, and it was amazing because we're training for it in the springtime, obviously, in summertime, and our track and field team would be there, and we were friends with some of the girls, and I mean, we would tell them about, we have to go run the 2-mile test, and we're dying, and they're watching us because they're doing warm-ups in the middle while we're running the track, and they're just giving us a hard time the entire time, because I mean, like they did that as like a warm-up, some of those girls at that level. And here we are, we got shin splints everywhere, we got guys running backwards because they're dying. I mean, hockey players are not known to be the most flexible athletic players necessarily off the ice when it comes to that kind of training. So and then you throw in the fact that, Wes, you'll know this, Waldo's was right across the street just staring at us in the face the whole time. That was a hard one to swallow too when we're training for that 2-mile.
Yep, I spent every Thursday night at Waldo's sitting up.
A lot of people did.
Yeah,
Which was right across the street from the police station, ironically.
Yeah. Yep.
No,
I still spend Thursday nights there. I'm the one who checks IDs now and sometimes helps the hockey players when it's packed and find a way in.
Right on. They still have the pictures?
Yep.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah, Wes also likes to take IDs from current hockey players.
I mean, what part of the police station is right across the street don't you get?
Yeah, you're helping him out.
Hey, he still joined us, even though you took his ID. I won't say stole because it's your job, but
he got
smart
it,
idea.
He got it back by the end of the night, so
fine. But smart plan making friends with the women's track team, because when I was in college, it was just small D3. We're practicing indoors, and it's the indoor track, and the track team would be practicing. Let's just say all the shots did not go where they were supposed to go, because we were distracted.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome.
Go ahead, Wes.
Go ahead. I can save mine for later.
I was gonna say, like, I wanted to transition then into your pro career, and what that transition was like from the college level into the pro level, because I find that fascinating with like we talked about it with Trevor and other guests that we had on that have done that transition.
Yeah, it was tougher in some senses and then easier in others. College is so run and gun, and so many times you do feed off of the energy of the crowd, which isn't just a regular crowd, it's a student section. So you're seeing these people around campus, and you got buddies out there all over the place that come to the games. And so and then you also have that camaraderie where everybody's, like I said, in it together. You're singing the fight song after wins, and everything's for the logo on the front of the jersey. um and then you get to pro, and it is a very selfish environment. And I understood why it has to be, because we're all chasing the dream. There's only so many spots. But I mean, right away, you're not necessarily getting like, hey, we want to win this game. Like, a lot of the stuff was, hey, I'm this close to this bonus. I need this. I don't care if I got to hang out the red line and fish for a pass that'll give me an odd man rush or a breakaway. I need this extra 5-10 grand, or this will put me, it's my contract year, and this extra point will put me in a level of contract negotiations where I can make a little bit more money, kind of situation. There was definitely some of that happening, especially with the teams that, when I got called up to San Antonio at the end of the season, they were out of playoffs for a long time before I got there. So it was a very odd environment to be in, for sure, in that sense. And obviously, too, I mean, you're still competing for a position, but like you're competing for a position in college, but it's more you're competing for playing time. Whereas there, you could get released, traded, not offered a contract again. So, guys, there's definitely um, a level of just individualism that you, when you get out of college, you really miss that college camaraderie. To the point where I was in San Antonio and it was St. Patrick's Day, and all the guys were having a good time back at Western, and I'm starting to live out my dream, and I'm playing in the AHL, and I'm getting ice time and opportunities, but I almost wanted to go back to Western just to go party, because I missed that closeness, and that just wasn't there. Um, and then playing wise, professionally, it was much more controlled, much more systematic. The skill level was ridiculous. You guys have probably heard it through all your interviews, and just being hockey fans and watching all the games too. But the cliche is like, if you got called up to a higher level, the game almost slowed down and was easier in a sense, because all the players are that much better, but that much smarter and in the right place. So you could almost sometimes just throw a puck blindly, and your teammate's going to be in that spot systematically. Whereas in college, it wasn't necessarily that. It was a lot of run and gun, very various levels of skill that could make certain plays as well, or had that hockey IQ. So that was the biggest and hardest transition for me, was just going from brotherhood to individualism, and then just much more control. Don't go out of your way to try and kill somebody, because that's not the big picture anymore. The big picture is, don't put everybody out, be in your spot when you're supposed to be there, save the big hit for another time. um, Oh, and then obviously the number of games and the amount of time you spend on the bus pro is wild, wild versus college.
But
Um,
it in the, so go ahead, Wes.
I think
Unless
Ethan Frank, who was our captain 2 years ago, set the hockey world on fire last year in the AHL All Star Game, skating the fastest time in recorded hockey. He kind of said something similar. He was like, it wasn't so much the speed of the game; it was knowing that you don't go full out all the time anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not full go for 60 minutes. It's picking your spot, knowing that there's a moment to go and there's a moment to sit back, and it's not all full tilt all the time. So I think
Exactly.
something similar that I think a lot of us don't realize, because you just hear like, oh, the game's speeding up and they're waiting for it to slow down to them type of thing. You especially hear it in football, like, oh, just give them a couple of games or a season or two, and the game will start to slow down to the player or whatever. But it seems like you guys are saying that like it's not so much that the game speeds up or slows down. It's almost it's a different game, and it's how you use your energy throughout the game that makes it seem different.
Exactly. And you got to pick your spots on when to go, because I don't know, maybe for example, like a puck gets dumped down as a defenseman and there's a line change, and I'm going to go get that puck in college and I'm going to try and go coast to coast because everyone's changed and I know I got that open ice. So at least I can enter their zone. But that's not the key thing here in pro. It's control. It's you want to have that puck. The longer you have that puck possession, the greater the chance is to win the game. So you don't necessarily want to be the D man who's leading in the charge, especially if your role is defensive defenseman. Roles are so important, and knowing what your role is in pro. And I mean, you'll get benched, sent down, traded real fast if you're confused about your role and you're not a first or second rounder.
Um, my question was going to be it's a little similar to that, but um, when Wes and I had gone to the Western game in Nashville, we caught an AHL game in Chicago and watched the Chicago Wolves, and you could definitely tell some differences between the players as far as they were playing the Texas Stars. So, I mean, Anton Khudobin was playing in net for Texas, and I'm like, this dude was a starter 2 years ago. But then I think it was Riley Tufte who had played at UMD. He was playing for Texas. There were a couple guys on Chicago, but college, you kind of know the teams, but in the pros, can you tell individually, like guys that are right there, either they're younger or they're older and kind of on the decline? Like how easy is it to tell the difference in the skill level once you get on the ice with those guys? I mean, everyone is talented, but you kind of know, or at least we can see who's moving up and who's moving down.
Yeah, I think from early ages, not just even at pro, but you kind of get an eye for someone who sticks out. I mean, I remember, uh, for example, Kevin Porter. He was in San Antonio at the time, and I remember playing against him at Michigan. I think he was the Hobie Baker winner his final season. Um, and guys like Chad Kolarek, who was with him as well. And I mean, there was lots of first rounders, top 10 picks, and they were still in the minor leagues or in the American League after 5 or 6 years. That's typically not a good thing for those players if they're a first rounder and they're still in the American League and it's been 3 seasons and they're not a consistent NHLer. But you see what those guys are missing, whatever it is they're missing. And then you'd see somebody like a Kevin Porter, who for the most part, honestly, he didn't look overly flashy, but he just did little things like the way he would pull up once he entered the offensive zone. He would pull up right in the center. He wouldn't do the Gretzky along the wall and pull up and slow it down. He would just literally deadpan stop right between the blue line and the top of the circle and the center of the ice and just stand there for a good 2-3 seconds, but always make a play with the puck. Like the way Kane does. He's like a video game, early Patrick Kane. The guy, he's not going to turn it over. He's going to make a tape-to-tape pass somehow. That was like this Kevin Porter. So it's sometimes, obviously, you see the flashy things that are obvious that this person stands out from the rest. But as someone who played the game for a long time, saw firsthand, there's just players that do things and think in a way that I would never dream to do or ever have the balls to do. And they make it happen. To me, that was how guys stuck out, was just if they tried things that you have no business trying, the majority of players.
That gave me a little flashbacks with Patrick Kane being a Wild fan.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
that was my face. I was like, oh, yep, I know that
Yeah.
way too well.
Yeah.
Western kind of saw that last year with Ryan McAllister, freshman who came in, played really well in where was he at? The MJHL?
I
But
think he was. I think he was in Manitoba. I don't think he was in Saskatchewan.
he comes in and literally just lights it up as a freshman. I mean, I think he had nearly 50 points. He, top line with Jason Poland and Max Sasson, all three signed pro deals after last season. But from the day, like game one, you knew he saw the game different than every other college player saw the game. His hockey IQ was leaps and bounds above a lot of what we saw come through Western. And to be fair, even though he was a freshman, I think he did more to elevate the older guys on his line than
Mm.
they necessarily did to elevate him.
Yeah, and that's a totally another distinguisher too, is that how much better do you make your teammates around you? If you're no longer on that line, is that same player getting all those points? I mean, it's the whole McDavid conversation. You can put anybody in his line and they're going to get an 8-8 contract the following opportunity, you know. But it goes beyond just hockey IQ too. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like your blue chip Austin Matthew type of players. Just anybody who makes the NHL or a high level. There's certain things that you see that they do, and I remember at the Coyotes training camp, we were just bag skating, just doing the ladder. And there was one player, I forget his name now, but he ended up playing, having a good career in the NHL. But this was, I don't even think it was rookie camp. I think it was a prospects camp, just all the draft picks getting together in the summertime or spring. And this guy, just bag skating, the way he skated was so smooth and efficient that you go from goal line to near blue line, back to goal line, and that guy's already 3 lengths ahead of everybody else, and he's not even breathing hard. So skating ability sometimes is that just one distinguisher from everybody else. And then there's obviously fighting's kind of going out of the game, at least the heavyweights are. But playing with a guy like this guy named Brett Gallant. Do either of you know Brett Gallant? The Gallant name?
I've heard the name.
No.
American League
I
killer.
have. Yeah.
American League killer, pound for pound, probably one of the toughest to ever do the job. I mean, 6 feet, 165. He's probably bigger now, but when I play with him in Elmira, 165. And this guy, the things he would do in a fight, like I never see him lose one. So there's just always some kind of skill set, whatever it is, that they just excel at, that you can't someone like myself can't fathom how you do that, how you get there, what the process is even to get there. Those are the little things that stick out.
And then I think you were one of the first people that followed me on Twitter, and it was kind of a freak out moment because I'm going to let you know you were my all-time favorite Bronco player, even though I only watched you play for 2 years. But
Sure.
and I think you also follow me with your HPA account, that Hockey Players Assemble. What can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, do you still do it, and what it is, and something to that nature, to get a little bit more about your off ice life?
Yeah, for sure. So I don't do it anymore. I haven't since I stopped playing. But I just remember before I left for college, Jim Colhane, our head coach at the time, he just said, look, don't be one of those guys that goes to practice, goes to the gym, and then just does nothing, plays video games or watches movies or just goes to the bar or golf. So wherever the case is, don't be one of those guys. Like try to make a new skill set. Try to do something that when your playing career is over, you have some life skills to build off of in the real world. And so as any 20-year-old something kid would do, I didn't listen to him my first year pro, and I was bored out of my mind. So second year started kind of getting more into the community side of things and trying to figure out what I wanted to get into. And I met some really cool hockey guys: Dustin Sprout, Mac Faulkner, Kyle Hagel, who started this thing called Hockey Players for Kids. And guys from the NHL, American League, East Coast League, um, were all part of this organization. And basically, to be part of the organization, you just volunteer to go to different schools, help kids read, set up a floor hockey game tournament thing at the schools. And I thought it was awesome, the impact that it made. And you'd be playing in some communities where obviously, like Las Vegas, hockey was not massive. And that's where I met Kyle Hagel, actually, was in Vegas my first year. So kind of got introduced to the idea. But then you come in and you show some interest in these kids and kind of their skill development through reading, and you introduce them to the game at the same time. Then you say, if you meet this goal, we get to play this floor hockey game. And then these kids get hooked on it, and they're asking hundreds of questions about hockey. And it was just really cool connection. And seeing them at the game at a later date, it would just be really special. So that's where I kind of always thought I'd get into something nonprofit wise. And then when you go to smaller communities and you realize how big the hockey team is and popular the hockey team is, we're not Kim Kardashians by any means, but we do have a little bit of influence in some of these smaller communities, especially when you go overseas. I mean, I'm telling you, like, when I played in the Elite League, those fans, the fan bases, while they're way smaller than some of the rugby clubs or soccer clubs, those fan bases would get behind any initiative that any player was part of, just because they loved the game so much. They loved the way we played and what we gave to them on the ice every night, and they just wanted to get behind us in anything. So kind of learned that you could raise some money for good causes through that little influence that we have. And the whole Hockey Players Assemble thing was about bringing players around to basically crowdfund, get fans, because social media was starting to get really big at that time, kind of have that fan interaction through social media. We created, my wife, myself, and then some fan or community supporters, team supporters throughout the years would help me build this website where people could donate to the website, and then we would distribute the funds to the local charities that we said we were fundraising for. So that's kind of what it was, how we stayed involved in the community and kind of started capitalizing on our small town fame through social media, especially.
I think for me that you actually ended up going into the question that I had, um, and it's really cool to hear. But when you were overseas in the Elite League, um, I actually was looking the research that I was doing. You probably played against a guy that I kind of know. In 13-14, he played for Dundee, and his name was Nico Sacchetti. But the when I first was kind of introduced to the Elite League, it was like, yeah, this isn't so much, and it's grown a lot. Um, and unfortunately, I also knew Adam Johnson. I played tennis with him.
Oh, really?
Summer league, yeah. So I
No.
knew him,
My
and
condolences.
I'd play with him. But um, the growth of that league, and it seems like, right at the time that you were playing over there, the game really grew. And what was that like to experience, where it was like, okay, this is ice hockey, to now you see highlight videos and everything, and it's like a soccer match over there. Everybody's behind you. Like, what was that like?
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't think much. I remember my going into my senior year at Western, and we were in the summertime training, and a former Western player came back, and he was playing for Belfast, the Belfast Giants. And I just remember asking my buddy, like, "Oh man," or telling my buddy, making a comment like, I just hope I never end up in that league. The NHL at that point, NHL, that's all you care about, right? So to think anything outside of that, I didn't know you could make careers around the world, essentially. I didn't even think about the different opportunities that were out there. and life experiences you could get through international play. So to me, I was just so focused on the main goal. But, you know, I think it was after my first year in Vegas, one of my teammates that year ended up going to Newcastle over there. And after talking to him and his experience over there, he was kind of mentioning what you were mentioning. I mean, the fan bases are unbelievable. It's so fun to play for a fan base that's on their feet the entire time. They got the drums, the flags, all the chants. They have chants for each and every single player on the team. I don't know how they remember it, but they remember all the chants for the players. Um, and it's just rowdy from the second they drop the puck till the very end when you're doing these cheesy hot laps, clapping your stick, thanking all the fans, kind of thing. And it's just you love it, and it was the closest thing to the lunatics that I ever experienced the rest of my career. So yeah, it's you throw in the fact that they're in the UK, at least they're offering to entice imports, they're offering to pay for the master's degree. So, after a couple of years in the East Coast League, maybe I cut it too short. I don't know, but I decided I wanted to try to get an education out of it, partly because I was um, so bored at times, and I didn't want to just play another season thinking that I'm not developing skills at the same time. So when I heard that I could get my master's over there, I started to actively look for it, and fortunately got a deal with Cardiff Devils in that sense. But to be able to travel around the world a little bit, playing a sport, get an education out of it, and then learn the customs of another region of the world, no matter how similar or not similar to where we're from is. It's so eye-opening, and I think it makes you more of a rounded person. Um, and then in terms of the hockey side of things, uh, I underestimated for sure, and I was off to a really slow start, and I was nervous that they were going to send me home as one of the imports in the team because I was off to a slow start. Um, but fortunately they stuck with me, and I got my act together real quick. And I thought maybe I could go over there and be a goal scorer, and now I haven't been a goal scorer since youth hockey, including juniors. So you learn real quick that the players that are most successful in the elite league and in general are the ones that really do just stick to the basics, stick to what your role is, and you'll succeed. And yeah, I mean, now they used to say my first year how much the league has improved, but um, now they're playing in the Champions League of hockey, and they have a couple other offshoots that some teams get to play in over there against some of the top leagues, Russia, Swiss, um, Slovakia, is all them, and they're competing hard and they're playing well and stealing some points sometimes. So yeah, the UK league especially is one to watch out for with their Brits improving.
Yeah, they have improved a ton over the last few years. Um, I still though am thinking I really hope you destroyed that guy because he went to my rival high school. So in that 13-14 season, when you played Dundee, I really hope you destroyed him a couple times.
I mean, Dundee was not the greatest team back then. So there was a good chance that they got destroyed in a couple different ways for sure. If it makes you
The
feel
Okay, that does make me feel better. The best chirp I ever heard, and I stopped playing hockey. I ref for a while, but I played basketball. But when he was getting recruited to the University of Minnesota, first of all, there was a Montreal Canadiens scout that was sitting behind us. We made him move because we were talking so much shit about him. But then he went down on a breakaway, and we knew the goalie's younger brother, and we asked him, PJ, what did you say to him after you stoned him on this breakaway? And he goes, well, I asked him, how do you expect to score on the Division 1 goalies when you can't even score on me? Like,
yeah,
oof, that one cuts deep.
yeah.
That one cut deep.
That's a pretty solid one. That's where my go-to response back would just be the punch in the face or cross check because I'm not smart enough to think that fast.
Yeah, neither am I. Neither am I.
For sure.
Wes is
But what's the best chirp that you guys have heard on here from other players that they've said? Just out of curiosity.
ooh.
Trevor also
I
said
think
the grocery stick one.
You like that one the most?
I'm trying to think of who else we've asked that question. A lot of guys were kind of like almost sheepish to answer the question.
like
Could be some that go pretty deep for sure.
Yeah.
I think Ethan, Luke, and Sam all were very reserved in their answers. Uh Trevor just gives us whatever because he doesn't give a shit at this point.
Yeah.
But Ethan, I mean, he's got a definite shot at the Caps, and then uh Luke and Sam, they're
They're still playing. They're current
yeah,
playing.
they're still playing at Western, and they're trying to gain the
Gotta
contracts.
be
And
yeah,
they're being a little more politically correct
gotta be
than
careful.
some others. And
I
I mean, if you look at the World Juniors roster that Sam played, he transferred in. Half the damn team is playing in the NHL right now, so he's trying to really be careful.
So how many players at Western specifically, especially since they've been ranked for a while now, consistently, and then ever since the transfer portal opened up, because that wasn't a thing at all when I was a player.
yeah.
How many transfers are they getting in and out?
Uh,
Right.
it it kind of depends on the year. Last year, right after the switch from Andy Murray to Pat Ferschweiler, there was a big uh exodus.
Oh,
Um,
was there?
yeah, both backup goalies left. Some of the freshmen left. A couple of the older guys who didn't get a lot of play time under first left. Um, and they brought in a few guys, but not big numbers. Like North Dakota seems to be heavy into the transfer portal. This is their second year with having like 7 to 14 guys come in. They revamped their entire D core this year.
Yeah,
Um, but really, I think Western has two,
I think two
three,
or three, two
four,
or three.
four
Is it
big
four?
name guys.
Okay.
Joe Cassetti transferred up from Miami. Uh, Sam Colangelo transferred in from Northeastern. Ethan Phillips transferred from BU, BU or BC. I think
I think it was
BU.
BU. I think
And
it was
then
BU.
Matteo Constantini transferred from North Dakota.
Okay.
And all
Uh,
four of those guys are proven to be excellent additions and taking their game to another level with the coaching staff that Western has put together.
That's awesome because that's actually kind of what I was wondering with the transfer portal. I forget which podcast I was listening to, but um, they referenced, I don't know, I'll just throw out RIT, for example. Um, I think they said one of their players at RIT was about to surpass like the point record for the university. And they said that the coach had mentioned this is probably the last player. It probably won't be broken again because at RIT, if someone has a record year in their first year, they're probably not sticking around as long as the transfer portal's around. They're probably going to try to find a bigger name school. And so with Western being ranked consistently for a while now, I was wondering if they would be in that same boat where they'd lose top players after one or two really good years, or they're good enough now with the reputation to keep them.
I think it's a
It,
little
it,
bit
it
of both, honestly. And like we've seen, the last couple years, Ethan was kind of a guy who developed late in his career. He took that extra year because of COVID and set fire to his career, led the nation with 26 goals. Everyone's thinking, well, there's no way they're going to do that again. And then in comes Ryan McAllister, Jason Poland, and Max Hassan. I think together as a line, they put up nearly 150 points. Each guy, I think, was over 40 points individually. Jason scores 30 goals in his fourth year. Um, there's something that this coaching staff is doing that is getting the best out of guys and creating opportunities for them to earn contracts. And
Awesome.
And I think even more so than getting to play in that big tournament. I think that's what a lot of guys are looking for too. Is can I get my name out there? Who's going to make me a better player? Where can I go to take my game to the next level? And Western's becoming one of those spots. I think even Sam kind of mentioned that when they were
Hmm.
asking him like, what drew you to Western in the transfer portal, and he said it was he liked the coaching staff, he liked what they were saying that they could do, and seeing guys who had been here develop into almost like all-star players at the college level.
Yeah, he was actually on his way to. I won't mention the school's name, even though he did tell us. Um, but he was on his way to visit another school when Western called, and he was like, "Yep, that's where I'm going." And it's not like he wasn't getting necessarily that recognition at Northeastern because uh, Devin Levi, their goalie, was one of the top goalies in the country. So they were getting national attention. And I mean, the World Juniors team, there's Brock Faber, Trevor Zegras, all these names that you know now in the NHL. Um, but he had seen what Ethan had done and then what Poland had done and what McAllister did as a freshman. And he was like, yeah, I'm going to go in there. And Wes and I have talked about this. I'm a little concerned with North Dakota and what they're doing because I think this is the third year that they've brought in a goalie from the transfer portal and they lost their whole defensive core. There's a list that's put out every year that's updated with the transfer out, transfer in, and North Dakota usually has one of the longest lists. Um, they
Surprising.
Yeah.
my Miami, they're up there, but they suck. Like
Yeah.
they're competitive, but they're terrible. Um, but yeah, with North Dakota, you would think the history, and I'm kind of like, I don't know about that coaching staff now. As soon as um, Hackstall left and is now the Kraken coach, uh, when Coach Barry came in, he won a national championship with that existing group, basically. And now that he's got his own kids in, it doesn't seem like they're really wanting to hang around. Um, they're overperforming for what we expected, having a whole new defensive group, but they also have one of the best goalies I've ever seen that transferred from Miami.
Right.
So it's interesting to see what different programs are doing with that transfer portal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I suppose um, a massive school like North Dakota too, there is a lot of interest over there. So I can kind of see how you want to take some chances on more players, maybe, or more players wanting to go over there. So you say sure, so which means players need to leave, otherwise they're not going to play. But I mean, in my experience, in the pro ranks, especially in the states, at the end of the season, if you looked at a roster and you saw 40 to 50 players or more on a roster throughout the course of a season, there was a culture problem. So I gather in a transfer portal situation, if you're seeing a long list of transfers every year, that could potentially signal a culture problem, which starts at the top for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're also seeing like a logjam too because of how many players are electing to take that fifth year that I think is still good up until next season. I think is the last year for COVID players. So
Okay.
you got those guys choosing to take a fifth year. Some of them transferring out of whatever school they're at. You've got guys playing in the NAHL, the USHL, who are like delaying them coming into college because they want playing time too, or guys like, well, I'm coming back for my fifth year and I've been a top line center all 4 or 5 years now. And then there's a kid who's like, well, I was supposed to be like competing for one of those top spots. I guess I'll check out this other school here. And then that kid leaves and like, oh, well, there's a spot now back at my first choice school. Do you think I still can? Yeah, come on in. Like we see some of the guys who transferred to North Dakota. I think Cameron Berg this year, he formerly played at Nebraska Omaha, and he goes, "Yeah, it was always my dream to play at North Dakota, but I didn't get in on my first try, but I'm here now," type of
Yeah.
thing.
Well, I wonder how many players they lost because of the COVID fifth year thing. How many down the junior ranks, especially Canadian players in the junior ranks down there, um, decided just to go to Canadian university or were overagers anyways in their last year, and there wasn't a spot for them anymore, so they just went to Canadian university and just stuck around there.
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing is that like we're seeing this expanse in college hockey with all these new teams getting D1 teams like St. Thomas recently, Augustana coming in, Lindenwood, Long Island. Like there's more teams, so there's more opportunities. But I think a lot of people, when they look at the transfer portal, they're not understanding the risk that some of these players are taking. Because when you go in there, you're giving up uh, your
Your
scholarship,
scholarship, yeah.
your spot at school, and even if you decide to like come back, like the school has to re-offer you a scholarship. You don't just like get it back because you decided, second thought, I'm gonna stay here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah,
and
there was
another
a
school
kid
has
from
to pick you up.
Colorado. There was a kid from Colorado College, but we did ask Sam Colangelo about this, and because I was curious, I have no idea how the transfer portal works. I said, "Do you get to choose where you're going, or do they have to recruit you?" And he said, "No, it's a risk. You put your name in there and pray that some other team picks you up, like some other school picks you up." Um, so, like Wes said, they are putting themselves at risk.
Mm.
It's, you know, you go out there and all of a sudden, say you were playing at North Dakota, um, maybe not getting a lot of ice time, but then it's okay. Do you want to go play at a Niagara, at um, you know,
Alabama Huntsville when they were still
yeah,
playing.
yeah, Huntsville, one of those schools? Is the ice time worth it for? And teams are going to find you
Yeah,
no matter what. If you have talent, teams are going to find you, but you have to weigh that risk reward type thing. So I think it's really fascinating to go through and watch how kids decide things, because I mean I wouldn't have wanted to do that 10 years ago when I was 22. I wouldn't have had the ability to do that.
oh yeah. I mean, it's funny hearing like some of the older guys, like myself and older's opinions on the transfer portal. Some really hate it. Um, I personally think it's pretty cool just to put more power into the players' hands at the NCAA level, and let them give them a little more opportunity to make their own decisions and not just be stuck somewhere if it's really not a good situation. That's just at a high level opinion of it all. Um, but I feel like I'm hijacking your guys' interview here, but I'm also super curious with the Neil deals as well and how that works at a hockey level because, I'm not saying I would have made big money, but I mean, I feel like I could have capitalized a little bit on that whole Frank the Tank thing and had a little more drinking money and
Yeah.
less summertime money, summertime jobs, I guess I should say, less roofing in the beautiful heat of the Midwest in the
Well,
summertime.
I was telling Wally, I was like, after you graduated and then Frank Slabowski came in, there was still enough of the student section that had remembered watching you play. And the new guys who came in the same year Slabowski did, they were trying to give him the Frank the Tank. And all the older lunatics are like, no, 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 no. There's only one. He was already here. We're going to give Slabowski's going to be Big Slabowski because the Big Lebowski, it works fine. So you'd have half the younger student section was going Frank the Tank. All the other guys were going Big Slabowski. And it was just two chants going at the same time for the goaltender who had come
Yeah.
in like right after you had left. And it was hysterical. But
That's hilarious. So how much do you think like Western Michigan level player, like range wise, could bring in on a Neil deal? Because I mean, you see ridiculous numbers for football, obviously, but that's another level.
yeah, I mean, Western seems like it's a good spot where they could potentially like do it right. But at the same time, it's like we don't see a lot of the like deals that happen. Like, I see commercials for the female basketball player from LSU who was
Oh,
given shit last year because she did the same taunt that another player had done
Oh,
previously.
Angel.
Cody's.
Yeah. And so like I'm seeing her on like national commercials now. I'm not necessarily seeing any hockey player, even from any school, like the bigger out east schools, like doing commercials. Um and there's so much like or like confusion about what an NIL deal is. Like
There's that too. Yeah, I really don't know.
I mean,
the way
I
the way
think
that I've heard some explain it is like if you go home in the off season and you want to do like a hockey camp, you can now say Chris Frank's summer hockey camp, and you could get paid to like teach kids some of the stuff that you're learning at college. Like that's what it was kind of meant to do,
Gotcha.
or um if you wanted to sign autographs and take like $5 a pop to do it, you can do that now. That type of stuff, or even like the one kicker from FSU who was told he had to take his YouTube channel down because he was profiting off his name. Like I think players can do that kind of stuff now, and yeah, they can sign deals. But I think everyone's you hear it all the time, like it's going to take $1.5 million to get a quarterback in the college level. Who's paying that $1.5 million, right? The school's not doing
Right.
it because they still can't pay players, or like there's things they've worked out. Like no one really understands fully how they work, but I think there's opportunities, and Western seems like it would be a good spot with the way that they're being ranked and the number of guys that they're putting through to the next level, and you're seeing them work out, whether it's at the AHL level or the NHL level, or just kind of bounce in between the two. So I mean, as long as there's businesses that are willing to promote through that, there's definitely an opportunity. The
Yeah, because I
downside is, there's just not. It doesn't seem like there's as much money dedicated to college hockey as like college football or college basketball.
for sure, but I just wonder how if it can work in a positive way where someone like myself was working like one summer I was working at a factory out in Portage, and I had the 4 p.m. to 10 a.m. shift, and then I wake up at 9 a.m. to go train for a couple hours, and that's what I did.
Yeah,
Whereas, or we get the odd job from someone who was a fan of the team, and they're a roofer or something like that, and they're throwing you labor work, right?
yeah,
Like they don't need you, but they're doing you a solid. Like whether it's the car dealership and football players, you don't need commercials, but somehow there's money being moved around.
yeah,
Like if that's an opportunity where players won't get in trouble anymore, if they're instead of like the contractor saying I'll give you work, just being like, here's some dough. It's a
yeah.
tax
I
write
think
off.
I think that's kind of like the hope too. I mean, you say like, hey, come maybe show up once in August and like we're gonna sell ice
Whatever.
or whatever. Just sign ice bags of ice for like 10 minutes, and we'll throw you like
Right.
whatever. Yeah, I think that those are the opportunities that exist now for sure. But again, it's still like
and
who necessarily understands I don't even think the players know what the deals are. Like there was a report, if a player takes an NII deal and they're not reading the contract, does it carry over if they transfer? Are they going to be on the hook for something later because they didn't necessarily fulfill the obligations that they had signed? Like it's so in its infancy that, and we hear 50 different things that just confuse people who aren't in it.
well, and it's so convoluted. So I hear a little bit more of it um just here in the Twin Cities area. They'll talk about it on the radio, and there's something where the student athletes, especially the ones they have some collective bargaining, like some sort of CBA, but it's just like a pot that all the money goes into and they distribute it. Well, University of Minnesota, it's such a big school and there are so many teams. I don't know how that works. And I'll just kind of tune out. But I think with, the commercials and everything, you see the Alabamas, the Ohio States, and Michigans in football, um, getting that. I think for hockey, if they're doing ads and everything, these smaller towns are going to benefit. Duluth, Kalamazoo, Grand Forks, Omaha, Oxford, Ohio. Like I actually think it's going to move west as far as getting these players because a lot of the East Coast schools, they're in Boston or New York or New Jersey. They're all right in that area where now all these smaller schools, they're going to be like, hey, we can get you.
Yeah.
I would say like 10 to 50 grand, somewhere in that, for a deal is probably reasonable for a Kalamazoo, a Duluth, um, a St. Cloud, a Mankato, those type of schools. So kids are going to look at that and be like, yeah, pretty good. And then of course UMD, St. Cloud, Mankato, Western, they have that clout now because of the last 5-6 years. UMD had back to back in 2018, 2019. St. Cloud was in the Frozen Four. Uh, Mankato, I think, lost in the national championship one of the years recently. Uh, North Dakota has a recent national championship. So I think a lot of that money is going to be moving west just because of the success that the NCHC has had in general. I think the only two, is it 2016? I think dating back to 2016, there's only been two non-NCHC national champions.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I think Denver has two, Duluth has two, North Dakota has
North
one, and St. Cloud was a runner-up.
Wow.
And then there was UMass beat us in 2020, and
There wasn't one in 2021 because of COVID.
or
No,
never
2020 was
mind.
COVID.
UMass beat us in 2021, and then Quinnipiac won it this year. There's somebody else that lost in 2022.
I think that was Denver's ninth.
Oh no, yeah, you're right. Denver won in 2022 because they pretty much bookended our national championship, because I think we would have three-peated in 2020, but then it was canceled. It's like, damn it.
Yeah, that's so devastating. So if I heard you correctly, you're saying that there's basically a pot for each school that these meal deals kind of go into, and then it gets distributed.
That's at least the way that the University of Minnesota is kind of running it now. I don't know the details, but it's like a Gopher Collective or something that they also have money that goes into and they distribute it. Now, I don't know what that does to affect the individuals, but if you're a gal on the volleyball team, I don't know who you are, but
Yeah.
you're doing these commercials for the school or something like that, then you should get a cut of the pie as well.
Sure,
Like
yeah.
everybody should get at least a little piece of the pie. Tennis players aren't gonna get noticed. Big Ten baseball don't really get noticed. The diving team.
Right.
So I think that's more for the rest of the athletes, but then you get like a Caleb Williams or a why can't I think of the Washington quarterback's name right now?
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But you get these stars, they're going to have a little more pull, and they're going to get their own individuals. Paige Becker's women's basketball player for UConn, who's from Minnesota. She's got Gatorade deals. She's got that. So I think the pot is more for the students.
And the
but
school,
then,
like school using the player's likeness. If the ad or whatever the opportunity has to do with the school itself, it goes to the pot for the players, but they
yeah,
also have their own offshoot individual thing which has nothing to do with the university.
yeah, I believe that's how it's working.
That makes sense.
Yeah, Western
But
has one too.
Interesting.
But like I said, I mean, a lot of it's you hear it mostly through football, and this player's worth X amount of dollars, or he's transferring from this school because this school gave him a better deal or whatever it is, where you hear a lot of it. So it,
Gotcha.
it's still so many questions about what it is and how it works. I think we should try and get the AD from Western back on at some point, Mike, and ask him some of these questions.
Yeah, and hopefully he's not firing the football coach the day that we get him on.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, that was really fun. But Wes, going back to your like, it costs so much for a quarterback. I've heard it from your favorite head coach of all time, PJ Fleck, a few times
Oh,
here.
yeah. Legend.
Wes
I
loves
have
him.
mixed feelings about one Mr. PJ Fleck.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate what he did for Western, getting us to the Cotton Bowl. I don't necessarily appreciate the way he left,
Yeah.
but so
Well,
the fact that he may be struggling or a little bit mid in the Big Ten, may not be so mad about it. All right, that's all I'm saying.
I was thanking Wes a couple years ago, and now I'm like, do you want him back?
He's
I just remember we got to a bowl game when that guy was here during my tenure, so everyone loved him. I didn't pay attention after that. I didn't really pay attention during either, but
I think we got to 3 straight bowl games.
yeah.
The Idaho Bowl, which we lost, the Bahamas Bowl, which they won, and then the Cotton Bowl, where they literally lost because of the pick six on like the very first play of the game, because they outscored Wisconsin after that. Yeah.
The only football thing I was ever sour about when it came to Western Michigan was when Greg Jennings left Western, and anytime he was on like Monday Night Football and they introduced themselves and their alma mater, he would never say Western. He always said this high school.
Oh.
Come on. Throw some ball.
Yeah. But he put his team on his back though.
I think he's back around the area. And then, Sky Moore, who was with Kansas City. His first touchdown was in the Super Bowl last year.
Okay.
So that was a big moment for Western fans.
But, that's huge.
Yeah.
I just think on one of my fantasy teams.
But some of us are more hockey fans than football fans. The hockey team's been more consistent the last few years.
Yeah.
We asked Wally about it, and we have to ask you about it, and kind of played with it during the intro there with the Stevens mention, but potentially like the biggest hit of all time in college hockey is you running through that dude from U of M. What led up to it? What were you thinking before you made contact? And then you just turn around and skate away. Did you have any idea the devastation that you had left behind you?
Oh, 100%. So what happened? It was honestly probably 5 minutes before that, like 5 minutes playing time before that, was my good buddy Sean Weaver was cutting across the middle as he normally did with his head down, trying to dangle. And he got clipped center ice, except it was dirty. It was a straight elbow. And it was on ESPN Top 10 to prove it. But he got clipped with an elbow, and he was lights out. So obviously you can't fight in college hockey. But I remember we were waiting around for 10 minutes maybe while they got him off the ice and everything else, and you could hear a pin drop. And I just remember Kenner, the defensive coach, tapped me on the shoulder and was like, Frank, you got the green light. Do whatever you want. So my very next shift, defensemen's come to change as the puck comes out of our zone. I jump on the ice, and I see we dump the puck in, along the bench side of Michigan. So I just started skating as fast as I could because I knew what they did through. I knew what that weak side winger would do, and their weak side winger would go down low to go retrieve it, thinking that a D won't pinch. So I just went full speed. Back then it was, I think, as long as you stop skating within 2 strides or something like that, whatever the rule is back then. So I stopped my stride and everything, and I couldn't have timed out more perfectly. And yeah, I had separated my shoulder not too far I just came back from a separated shoulder, not too far from that game. So, and I put on my shoulder pads that I wore in juniors when we used to fight, which were these tiny little Sherwoods. You guys may have seen them before through just the locker rooms of your days, but they're nothing. It's basically not wearing shoulder pads. And so I had these on, and I was nervous right before I went in, but I wanted to get vengeance so badly. And it was just one of those perfect hits where the impact is going to be so great, but I felt nothing. It was like a pillow. And yeah, I mean, you feel bad about what happened afterwards. I actually ended up playing with that guy a couple of years down the road. And we were kind of eyeballing each other in the locker room before we both acknowledged it. And it was pretty funny because, I mean, we ended up having a good time and a good laugh about it later on. But the description on the video said he had like a collapsed lung and all this other stuff. And he's like, honestly, all I had was a concussion. There was nothing else. But
which is incredible because you absolutely bullied that dude. Was
yeah,
he the dude who hit, or was he just another, like, just any guy in a blue helmet was going to do
I
it
was just
that
looking
day?
looking for anybody to get vengeance back on. And yeah, that the look away thing was more just a swag, fuck you kind of thing. More than anything else.
What year was
I
that?
0506, I
Okay, so
think.
that was your freshman year.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't remember when I saw it, but when it finally like made its way back around, and it was like that dude plays here, and we get to go see him Friday for $0. I will be there every Friday and Saturday for the rest of forever.
Right. Yeah. Well, it was so cool that it made the top 10 on ESPN. But obviously, when you're in the locker room the next morning, all that's on is Saved by the Bell, followed by ESPN the rest of the day.
Mhm.
And then that's across all different sports. So you go to the trainer's room and with the football team, and ESPN is playing. They do the top 10 every hour back
Yep.
then. And so everybody was loving it except for my buddy because it was a collage of that game. And so my buddy was also being reminded of him skating with his head down as well, getting knocked out. Yeah.
Could you
I
imagine if that had happened at Lawson?
Oh, yeah.
You
I mean, I had some decent runs. I knocked the dude out at Michigan State that same year in October. He was lights out. And yeah, I mean, the coach had to come on the PA and tell the fans to like stop chanting because we weren't sure if he was conscious as he was on his feet, but yeah.
just the lunatics would have gone bananas if they
Yeah.
had, like, because that would have been right in front of them too.
Well, especially Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, we used to line up so early for Michigan and Michigan State. Ohio State was kind of iffy. A lot of people just carried over the dislike of Ohio State from like growing up Michigan or Ohio or Michigan State fans from like before they got to Western, so they carried that one over. But there was a line around that building every weekend to
I
watch,
know. And like
and
three
still
feet
is.
with that wind chill. I
Oh yeah,
couldn't believe it.
yeah.
yeah.
Snowball fights breaking out, dude, like hours early. Like I'm not even kidding you, Mike. Like I think if
I
it,
know, but you're talking about the cold.
Yeah,
I
Minnesota.
grew up in northern Minnesota.
oh dude, we would stay warm hucking snowballs at each other, or you know, testing the waters who's gonna try and throw one at the snowplow driver and then get everybody in trouble. I think there's like twice they threatened to kick everybody out of line and not let a single student in if another snowball had even been made.
You guys are definitely built way tougher than myself and my people over here in the PNW. Because my experience those winters, the fact that we shut down after like half an inch of snow, literally shut down over here because we just don't have the resource to take care of it. The fact that we were still going to classes when there was like 3 feet of snow out, the only reason why you would miss a class is because of the wind chill. It had nothing to do with the
Yeah,
amount of snow. I thought was insane.
yeah, you were most likely to get a snow day on a Monday if it had been cold all weekend because they
Yeah.
couldn't get the buses running around campus, or like enough professors couldn't get their cars started because they forgot to go warm it up. Like that's when you were like, it's Monday. It was -15 all weekend. You're watching the news like Come on. Damn it. You're going to make me walk up those hills at 8 a.m. to math. Hate you.
Yeah, those hills were insane. That was another thing I learned, not being a Midwest guy, is my first week of classes that freshman year when it's that Indian summer. I mean, walking up those hills in that humidity and heat, I learned quick to bring an extra shirt to class because I was sweating through them.
Yeah. Where'd you live?
I don't think it's around anymore, but we were in the Burnhams my first year.
Yeah.
And North Campus Village, I think, off the one-way street.
Yep. Off of Kendall.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, right there.
Yeah, I lived in the valleys. I lived in Valley 3.
Okay, sweet.
So, yeah. So I had literally the farthest walk to Lawson. So what I would do is on Friday is I'd get out of my last class. I'm like, all right, the game starts at 7. They open the doors at 6. We're gonna be there at 4 because we want to be as close to the door so we sit right next to the penalty box. I'm gonna catch the bus around campus, get off at Miller. So all I gotta do is walk from Miller to Lawson, and then I'll sit there and freeze for a couple hours, sit through the hockey game, and then I'll walk my happy ass all the way back across campus.
Oh my God.
It was a long walk when y'all lost, but it was not that long of a walk when we were winning.
Yeah, fair point.
I definitely would have brought a few pops.
There was definitely more than one wobble pop had in line and throughout the night. All right. It's not like we weren't prepared. We just had a way of making sure we weren't walking a mile uphill to get to and from the game.
Have you ever walked in Duluth? That is an uphill. No. I was going to ask you, have you actually ever been to Duluth? I don't know if you guys played. My Bulldogs.
Did we?
Because you.
We did play. I think we did play at Duluth.
I'm thinking you might have. When did Amsoil open?
Well, we were in Minnesota. I don't know if it was like one of those Christmas tournament things again, but I remember being in Minnesota. I don't know. I'm having a hard time remembering now.
This is the power of the internet. Let's see.
Yeah, Wes will figure it out. Because
being from Seattle, we got a few hills ourselves, though. I can tell you that much.
How is it with having the Kraken over there?
Okay. It's exploding. I mean, Seattle is a FOMO city, as is. We're bandwagon fans, for sure, and we don't want to miss out on a good time when it comes to sports. So, I mean, to this day, they're still filling up the arena, and I mean, the impact on youth hockey is insane. I think Washington State has some of the highest registration numbers with the least amount of coach registration in the country, which isn't the greatest ratio, but they're definitely making an impact for sure.
I think Vegas probably had the same thing because really, I mean, I didn't really. Vegas hockey players, Jason Zucker was the only one that I really knew to come out of there. And I want to go to Seattle and see a game just because I think it'd be cool to see the arena. But the first year that the Knights were there, I happened to go on a trip with my friends. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to a hockey game. See you guys later. And I just went, and it was so much fun.
I'd love to go to a Knights game.
I need to go to a Knights game.
It is cool. The arena's cool, and their production is really cool.
The experience for sure at the Climate Pledge is unreal. I think that's the best part for a town that knows nothing about hockey overall. I mean, one of my favorite, I was just telling someone this the other day, one of my favorite things to do at a Kraken game is to overhear conversations of somebody telling their buddy what's going on in the game and being completely wrong about everything.
You need to go to a game at Bridgestone in Nashville. Holy shit.
Yeah, there's a lot of I know it syndrome happening.
We were so close.
I
We were so close to getting to go to one. And the arena
well,
flooded. Dude,
yeah.
I had the perfect hockey weekend planned out, right? I went to the K-Wings game the day before Thanksgiving. Picked Mike up from Grand Rapids. We drove down to Nashville on Thanksgiving, so we had like the football games on the radio on the way down. We were gonna catch Nashville versus Colorado in the morning, and then it was gonna be Western versus Northeastern at night in Bridgestone. And then on the way home, we were hitting the AHL game of the Wolves versus Dallas. We wake up to text messages and messages like, "Yeah, I don't think you guys are getting that NHL game in. Bridgestone's flooded. You might not get the Western game." Like a pipe had burst or something and flooded into the arena.
No way.
Yeah, it almost looked like, what was it, Edmonton a couple years ago when they had like waterfalls running down their stairs. I don't think it was quite to that level, but like their concourse or whatever was flooded. So they canceled the NHL game and they found one of like the two Predators practice arenas. And it's literally like high school bleachers on one side of the rink is all the seating that they have in this tiny little building. It's netted all the way around the ice. And when you go up to the seats, you're at board level. Like that's where the lowest row of seat is board level.
That's hilarious.
But there's a bar.
Yeah.
And there's a story for off the air about that.
Yeah. Love that one.
But yeah, so you end up going and watching Western beat one of the better goaltenders in the last 5 years in college hockey for the second consecutive year, because they beat Devin Levi in the NCAA tournament the year before. They beat him and Sam Colangelo, who's now at Western. He played against the team there in Nashville.
Did Western build a snowman in that game?
No, I think it was 6-3.
I know there was a Hattie.
It was 6-3. It was Jason Poland's third hat trick of the year. And I think the last one was an empty netter that he got from Max to finish off his third hat. He had 5 hat tricks last year. Back to back against Miami, and then back to back in the GLI when they built 2 snowmen in the GI. 16 goals in the GLI.
That's insane. Yeah.
So Wes, have you found what you were looking for?
Yeah. Did you not see a Minnesota team? You guys did play Northeastern. You guys played in the Florida College Classic against 2 Northeast teams.
Yeah. Like Bishop was on one of those teams, Ben Bishop.
Maine and something else. But yeah, I did not see a Minnesota Duluth there. But
yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, I think we're gonna wrap it up. I mean, we've been going for an hour and 45 minutes. We're a little bit lazier over here because it's so late East Coast time. But
yeah, sorry, Phyllis.
No, you're good.
I mean, he's East Coast, I'm Central.
Yeah. Okay,
whatever.
I don't really pay attention to it as long as like it's one of those things where if the conversation's flowing, why shut it down? But if we're struggling and like, you know, trying to just poke at anything and everything, like, let's just call this one good and yeah, not search for an exit later when it's too dark to see anything.
Sure.
So yeah, we'll wrap it up there. And for those who are watching on the YouTube, there's some YouTube type stuff you can do if you feel like it. Your people make decisions on your own. I'm not gonna tell you should do it or shouldn't, but you should because Chris was awesome. And then until the next episode, we'll catch you later. So, adios, people. Where's my mouse? All right. Well, that's the outro this week. Bye.